Keepie Uppies with Richie and Tots.
So welcome everybody to the next episode of Keepie Uppies, and we're delighted to be joined by Irish League referee and local man Niall Devlin. Niall, delighted to have you on.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
So you were getting a wee bit of VIP treatment. You were telling me on Monday evening, taking in the Northern Ireland game. So what was the game like itself, and what was the VIP access? Did you get to see any celebs, or did you get any nice food or drinks, or what? How did it go down?
Do you know, it was great. It was something that was organised through Conrad Kirkwood. So he started this thing last year where anybody who refereed in any of the association finals were sort of brought along as a VIP to one of the Northern Ireland games. So having been to an international game previously, so it was a good experience. And I suppose if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. So yes, VIP experience. We were treated to some food in the Dandy Blanchflower Lounge. So we were before the game. There was a few beer on offer, but it's off season, so I'm sort of trying to keep myself right, so I didn't have any at all. But the game itself was fantastic. There was periods, I suppose, where Northern Ireland were on top. The first 10 minutes were fairly good from their perspective, but they didn't really take any clear-cut chances out of the first 20 minutes when they were on top. But Kazakhstan had a very good opportunity from about 8 yards out, sort of close to half-time they missed. So it was a big miss for them. But I suppose in the balance of the game, a draw probably would have been a fair result. But they conceded late on, unfortunately. So they were beat 1-0. I think that's the third game in a row they were beaten 1-0.
Yeah, it was a kick in the teeth there, but I think it's going to take probably Michael O'Neill probably a wee bit of time just for things to click into place. And it's the same when he was his last spell as manager. It was kind of a very slow start, and then things just kind of kicked off after that. There's a lot of young players coming through as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Young team, likes of Shea Charles and Trey Hume and stuff. All young boys breaking into the squad. So I suppose he'll probably shift a few players about over the next couple of months to try and get his team right. But they are quite young, so hopefully with a bit more experience they'll start doing well.
Fingers crossed. So we're going to start off then. The focus obviously is on your good self. Usual start that we have with our guests. Who was your favourite team growing up, and who was your football hero?
Favourite team? Some will absolutely love, some will hate, but Manchester United. I've supported them from a young lad. The whole family supports them, so that was my favourite team. Still like to get over to Old Trafford maybe once or twice a year, but it can be difficult enough when you're refereeing on a Saturday to try and get the time to do so. So it is, but it's good to get over now and again and watch the stars. Favourite player growing up? There's a few idols, I suppose, knocking around whenever I was very young. So he's like Ronaldinho, Zidane, R9 as well. So some very, very good players. And I suppose everybody wanted to have their hair like Ronaldo with a wee fringe when I was growing up. So Ronaldo was a very good player. And probably somebody I looked up to as a striker at the time. But I suppose now, in today's society, you have the likes of Ronaldo and Messi, two very, very good players, and I suppose two very different players in their own right. I'm more of a Messi fan now, I suppose, than I am Ronaldo after he came to United recently, but I think the likes of Ronaldinho and Ronaldo growing up was probably my idols.
Yeah, we've had a few people, a few Man United supporters on, unfortunately, but there's been a few people who've been saying about they call him the real Ronaldo, but like that's Cristiano Ronaldo's not a bad player himself, but he was some player in his day. R9, wasn't he, at Barcelona, Real Madrid, and that World Cup in 2002. I think he ended up top goal scorer. He just had everything, you know.
He did. I think 2002 was probably sort of in around when I was starting secondary school, so I was sort of more alert to football around then. So he was probably one of the biggest idols then, him and Ronaldinho. So yeah, he was definitely probably one of the best players when I was growing up.
And then you said you were mentioning a couple of ball playing players, the likes of Zidane, Ronaldinho, all not bad. Did that kind of shape you then in terms of, when obviously you were playing outfield, did you see yourself then as an attacker? Because you were quite late on the footballing scene, you were telling me.
Yeah, I didn't sort of start playing football till I was 13, 14. To be honest, I played football in school, so I did. So I didn't start playing till late. So those types of players like Ronaldo, I was always sort of in school. I was always a striker. So that's sort of where I played. So like Ronaldo, that's the type of player I was sort of trying to imitate, I suppose. But Zidane was a hard man, and I was never really a hard man because I was 2 foot nothing. But I suppose I wasn't a bad striker because I was quick enough, but definitely not the hardest man on the pitch.
So you were late then on the footballing scene. You've played for some excellent football clubs. What would you say was your happiest time then playing football? Is there a particular club or spell that you had where you thought, yeah, that's where I really enjoyed my football. That's where I was playing with that bit of freedom, smile on my face, scoring goals, good crack.
Yeah, probably early on in my career, to be honest. Like I said, I started really late, and I stayed at my first club for one season. Then I went on to Craigavon City. Craigavon City was probably my first club and somewhere where I really enjoyed my football. I played under 18s with some very, very good young players. So I did. So we had a good team. I played with my brother as well, which helped. So it was a good team. We were doing well in the leagues and the cups and winning games, which helped. But I suppose that the whole club itself, like the fantastic atmosphere within the club, the likes of John Cochran and Tony Cochran, two really, really good sound lads and boys that really sort of helped you on in your career. And obviously that's where I sort of moved to Glenavon. If it wasn't for the likes of those two lads, then I probably wouldn't have pushed on to that sort of level of football.
And what was it like at Glenavon? What was that spell like? And you were just saying to me there's some excellent players you were playing alongside there, and I'm sure there was a couple of first teamers dropping down into the reserves. It must be a pretty good experience.
Yeah, that was my first real experience, I suppose, of a premiership club, a professional club as such. I know they're semi-professional, but they all behave like professionals in the most part. And I suppose early on, getting a glimpse of that, I suppose, joining late as well. That was the first time I'd sort of seen that sort of atmosphere and that sort of setup. So it was really good. Everything was done really professional. You turned up, your kit was laid out, that sort of thing. You had boys, like you said, dropping down from the first team all the time as well. So the likes of Brandy Shannon, some very, very good players. Really, really good. It's hard to say how many good players there was in that Glenavon team whenever I joined. You had the likes of Chrissy Lavery, Ryan Murphy, Mark Carson, some really, really good players. Even Anto McGonnell, I remember playing Anto, he was centre midfielder. Don't know if he managed to break into the first team, but he was one of the sort of best centre midfielders that I'd seen in a long time from I was playing. Obviously not used to seeing sort of that sort of level of football. He was very, very good. And he wouldn't have shied away from a tackle, that's for sure.
And then you also mentioned to me you came on then in the semi-final, was not right, for Lurgan Celtic, the Irish Cup.
Yeah.
Semi-final with your...
Yeah. I only joined Lurgan Celtic in sort of January 2016. I'd signed for Lurgan Celtic, or Lurgan United first, sorry. Paddy O'Hagan was the manager. He sort of lured me in with a pair of free boots and a load of free fries, but that the better. But then he was moving across to help out Lurgan Celtic, and I was fortunate enough that he had asked me and my twin brother and another young lad, Colin Tolan, to go with him. So we did. So we went across anyway, and I suppose at the start we were playing, and we were sort of playing away for the reserves and getting an opportunity, I suppose, in the first team to sit on the bench. Didn't play much football, I suppose, at the early part, and we were having a good run in the Irish Cup when I joined, which was lucky enough. But yeah, we got to the Irish Cup semi-final. We played Linfield at Windsor Park. And both me and my twin brother came on with about 75 minutes played, so it was a good sort of experience to not only to get on the pitch in a semi-final of an Irish Cup, but also to do it alongside your twin brothers. A big sort of experience as well. So
yeah, I was just thinking when you sent me that message, just thinking that must have been a pretty special moment. It's maybe not something until maybe later on, maybe in life, you'll maybe reflect on a wee bit more, and it must have been great for the family.
Yeah, no, it was a good, really, really good experience. I suppose stepping on the Windsor Park is a great experience on the best of days. So it is. It's a big stadium, and there's been plenty of good football played there, international matches and stuff. So the atmosphere that day was electric from both sets of fans. But we'll have a nice picture of us both coming on the pitch together. So I suppose that's one to treasure for later on in life.
It's crazy to think you're potentially sort of 2 wins away from playing Man United in Europe. When you think about it.
It's scary thought, isn't it?
But and what about Man United? I meant to ask you actually. What's your view? To briefly divert away from yourself there, but what do you make of Erik ten Hag's first season at the club? Are you happy, content?
I suppose we can be content in the fact that he's come in and he's sorted out a lot of problems and he's got rid of the background noise that Ronaldo was making. Ronaldo's a great player and all that, but his attitude probably leaves a lot to be desired. But he's come in and he's made some very bold changes, and he started to get us to play some style of football. Not always the right style, to be fair. Like, there has been times, I suppose, where you've watched games this season and it hasn't been the best and it hasn't been the best performance. But I suppose every team will go through that sort of patch. If you look at Arsenal, sort of towards the end of the season, they didn't have a great couple of games. And they could have got results here or there that could have probably favoured them. But when you think about United and how far they've come, I suppose, in the last couple of years, people will say, oh, they haven't really come far in terms of their numbers, in terms of stats and their league position. But when you think about the stuff that's going on in the background, I suppose he's trying to make a change for the future. So hopefully we'll start pushing on. We need to sign a few more players, I believe. So we do. I know we're linked with Mason Mount, but I seen that Chelsea turned down a 50 million offer, but if you're going to start paying for players that Mason Mount over 50 million, probably go down the same slippery slope we were before, just buying players for the sake of it.
Yeah, I think it's been a good, solid first season, to be honest. I think you would have taken a trophy on top 4 Champions League football beginning of the season, especially after the awful start. Those opening couple of games, especially that Brentford away match. You're thinking, goodness, is he going to survive 6 months? But fair play to him, and he's handled all those tough situations really, really well, particularly obviously the Ronaldo one, you know. But to go back to your good self, I just noticed obviously with the list of clubs that you played for, you've also played under Jared McMahon a couple of times, who obviously is going down as one of the great Glenavon players, one of the great Irish League players. But what was he like as a manager? Because I'm assuming you must have had a lot of respect for him, and likewise he must have had a lot of respect for you, the fact that he signed you a couple of times. What was he like as a manager?
He's one of the most respectable guys you could meet. He just has a way about him that he knows how to speak to people. He knows how to conduct himself, I suppose. And you go to a lot of clubs and coaches and managers don't know how to conduct themselves. Jordy's one of them boys that really do. He looks after you. Like, if there's anything maybe you're not sure of, he would stay behind after. He'd give you a good chat. He'd tell you what you need to work on. But he's not shy in giving boys praise as well when they do well. But equally, if something doesn't go well, he'll sit you down and he'll tell you what's not going well and how you can improve it. He's not one of these managers to say, oh, look, that was awful today, and let you go on about your business as if you don't know what you're doing next. But he's one of these types of boys that'll look after you and he'll tell you what you need to do to improve. So I've loads of respect for Jordy. I played for him twice. I played for him at Glenavon at the reserves, and I also played for him at Dramar Village. So I did. So Jordy's a really, really sound lad and somebody I have plenty of respect for.
So then obviously we're going to move into your refereeing career. So how did it happen then? You went from player into refereeing. How did that kind of come about?
It's funny. I'd done my cruciate when I was 26. I was playing GA at the time, and I'd done my cruciate, and my knee was fairly bad. So I'd done my cruciate and done my meniscus. I tore my MCL and my LCL as well. So I had pretty much banjaxed my knee. So I thought about it, and I knew I couldn't really play at the level that I wanted to play at. So I said to myself, I might as well go into refereeing. It was something I'd sort of done at underage. I'd done a beginner's referees course when I was under 18, and it was just sort of like to help out at maybe club games or sort of underage games. And Tony Cochran from Craigavon City had put me through that at the time, me and my brother and another fella as well. So I tried it then and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something I wanted to do while I was still playing, because like I said, I came on the scene late to football, so I wanted to keep playing. I wasn't ready for refereeing at that stage, but once I'd done my knee at 26, I sort of knew that the time was probably the right time maybe to retire from the football and actually turn to refereeing. So I suppose I already had an introduction to it, so at a young age, but I suppose to move into adult football then was going to be completely different for me. Probably something out of my comfort zone. Turning from having 10 other players around you on the pitch and the bench to being on your own maybe on a Saturday and a bunch of adults that are probably a wee bit older than you as well for the most part. So I suppose the knee injury kicked it all off. So it did. And then I just sort of had reached out to Michael Patterson, who was the Mid-Ulster referee chairman at the time. And I said that I was interested in taking the course. And I had to go out and play online and get that sort of kick-started. So he was sort of in the background, sort of helped me along and encouraged me, I suppose, to do the course, because some people show an interest and then when they find out what's involved, maybe they'll step back. But it was very rewarding at the start, I suppose, to have that backing from Michael, because it is a new change and a big change for a lot of people that come from referee or from playing into refereeing, you know.
Yeah, so it was an injury then that kind of really kicked it off. That must have been pretty tough. Obviously going through that injury, and as you said, sort of at such, because you're still, you're maybe a couple of years away from your peak, to kind of think, okay, I'm not going to be able to play at that level again. There might be, guys, women as well listening to the podcast that's maybe picked up a bit of an injury or a bad injury. So I think that's an inspiration for, I suppose, anybody that's down in the dumps that have picked up a bad injury, that look, there are other routes you can go down, whether it's coaching, managing, or even refereeing. But that, you must have been in a tough place maybe mentally, were you, at that time, or were you able to handle it quite well to think, you know what, that's happened, this is the route I'm going to go down? Or did you find it tough for the first wee while?
Yeah, I found it tough. I suppose my mental health probably wasn't the greatest at the time, because you've been playing for, I suppose, especially the GAA, like I was there for a long time, so I was playing for 15 years of that and playing the soccer. So you were going from maybe playing the football on a Saturday to playing GAA on a Sunday to playing nothing, and having to go through 9 months full rehab. So it was a tough sort of few months initially. First 3 months were tough. I suppose even from the surgery, the first couple of days pain wise was probably leaves a lot to be desired. It was very, very intense. So the rehab after that, it was just about trying to get motivated and try and get to the gym and doing the rehab. Now, in fairness, I had a very strong physio and Paul McCormick, and if anybody knows Paul, he's one of the best physios about. So he's a type of boy that would motivate you to keep going. So he was, because I know there was times that went to him and maybe he was giving me exercise to do at the start, and maybe I wasn't doing them, or I wasn't as far on as I'd hoped, and he was the type of boy that was there to throw the arm over the shoulder and say, look, we need to keep going, because I had aspirations of maybe when I'd done the knee the first time, of maybe playing again, but I didn't play the soccer. I went and played the GAA again. I've done the knee a second time, the sexy knee. So look, I suppose I've been in that place twice from 2 serious injuries in the same knee, and it's a tough place to be in, especially a long rehab process. But there are people out there that can assist you with the rehab process, and there's club men and stuff as well. And I know I had the support of a lot of local people as well throughout the rehab, and there was boys that always wanted to maybe go for a run with you. And like, if you were down, the boys were down training, you could still go down and do run straight lines and stuff on the pitch, or even if you were getting to the stage where you're doing sort of sprints, the boys were always happy to do the sprints with you or let you join in. So I suppose it's a tough place, but if you have the right people around you, it becomes a wee bit easier. But initially, yes, very tough.
But it just shows you as well that, despite that, going through that tough period, it has allowed you to go down this avenue with refereeing, and, you've progressed so well in such a short space of time. But so can you remember that first game pretty well? It was Broomhead Reserves, you were saying. So what was your thoughts? Because again, there might be people listening here thinking, yeah, I think I would think about going into refereeing, but as you said, they mightn't be aware of the work that you have to kind of put in before you can eventually get that first game. But what was your kind of initial feelings? Because you must have been pretty nervous, because I would imagine if I was in your shoes, I'd be absolutely bricking it, because you are, as you said, you're by yourself. It's not as if you have a couple of linesmen and fourth official, but, giving you a bit of support. You're you're out there by yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I suppose when I done the beginners course and then done the face-to-face sessions, you get a lot of support, or a lot of support from them. So you do. Andy Davey was the boy who was looking after it at the time, who's obviously a Premiership referee. So he gives you a lot of support throughout the sessions when you're doing the training course. But again, there's also in your own association mentors as well. So when you're starting out, and the likes of the Mid Ulster Referees Association will assign you a mentor. So that's somebody that's maybe been refereeing for a bit, that's happy to give up enough time to maybe chat to you, maybe either on a Saturday after a game or sort of maybe later on through the week, after you've had time to reflect on the situation or situations themselves, depending on how the game went. But first game, Broomheads McGarry against Moira Albion reserves, I remember clear as day. It was thankfully an easy enough game. There was no major incidents. Both teams were happy to have a referee, I suppose, because at the time we maybe were struggling for numbers for referees, but both teams were happy at the end, come over, shook my hand, said I done well, and I suppose that wee bit of encouragement, even though you might have made mistakes, don't get me wrong, you'll never have a performance that's pitch perfect, and there was probably mistakes on the day, but I mean nothing major, and both teams were happy. So I suppose having people around you, again, mentors, and maybe even getting a bit of encouragement from teams is good from time to time as well.
And do you think as well playing the game, having, albeit maybe your career was shorter than you would have liked, but do you think actually playing the game, soccer and as well Gaelic, but you had a good understanding of football and challenges in certain situations? Do you think that definitely benefited you when it came to refereeing?
100%. When you're a player, you sort of think you know the laws of the game, I suppose, but as a referee, you learn the laws of the game, I suppose, and a lot of the time you have to keep going over the laws of the game. But obviously as a referee, from being a player, you'll know certain situations, you'll know what to look out for. Like if maybe you see somebody maybe thinks they've been fouled, you'll know sort of in the next couple of seconds whether they're going to go in and make a lunge and challenge or that sort of thing. Like you keep an eye out for these things because when you know the mentality of players because you've played yourself, but you also know the mentality as a referee that you have to apply the laws of the game. So I suppose it definitely helps, and you can read the game a lot better. And I suppose maybe at the start I struggled quite a lot with positioning because as a player maybe you're all over the place, but as a referee you're all over the place as well. But you have certain situations where you want to see stuff better, like your angles or everything in refereeing. And I suppose in playing the game, you don't really think about angles. You're trying to get the most space that you can to make either a good pass or get a shot off. But as a referee, you're getting into the space so you can see and make good decisions. So it definitely helps in the game to be to be a player and then become a referee, in my opinion, because you're aware of players' mentality, but you're also aware of the laws of the game as well, which helps. Whereas players maybe struggle, I suppose, especially at the minute. One that's really contentious is a handball. Like, as a referee, we're taught about the laws of the game on handball, and players, if it hits the hand, they're shouting for handball all the time, but not every ball that hits the hand's a handball. So it's good to have both sides of it, but as a player, I've been there, and every time the ball hit the hand, I'd been shouting handball, so it's good to be on both sides.
Yeah, that's it. And do you find as well, with would you sort of take into consideration as well the match that you're refereeing? Say, for example, there's a team that okay, they're ball playing team that passes out from the back. That'll change maybe your thinking of where you need to be positioned. Whereas maybe say there's a team that a long ball team, maybe you'll again be positioned somewhere differently that you're not having to run from one end of the field to the other. Does that kind of change your thinking about, you were talking there about positioning?
It does. A lot of sort of stuff in refereeing is revision. So when I get my games, generally on a Monday, first thing I'll do is I'll check where the teams are in the league, and I'll see what type of sort of game it's going to be. And more often than not, I'll have had these teams before. But you're always chatting with referees, you're always chatting to colleagues, seeing maybe how games have gone maybe the week before. We're quite a close-knit community, I suppose, the referees, and I suppose we do have groups that sort of train together and do a lot of sort of things in the background together. So we're well aware of teams' playing styles when we're refereeing. And a lot of the time I like to do my research before the game just to see where teams are and how they're playing and sort of maybe even watching the likes of videos that are available on YouTube and stuff to see what sort of players maybe that you need to maybe keep an eye on and stuff. And it's not to say that you're going in and being prejudiced, but you're aware of maybe how to manage that player better, I suppose, is a better way of putting it, because some players are arm over the shoulder guy, and you can chat to them throughout the game and just maybe gently give them a bit of encouragement along the game. Look, let's keep playing. If they're shouting at you, look, let's get on with it. The decision's not going to change. There's people you can do that with, but there's also maybe the opposite style of player that's maybe up in your face that you need to be more firm with, and you'll see that. But watching the games, but you need to sort of do your revision and do your research on the teams. That's what I find very helpful anyway as a referee. I suppose that's maybe how I've progressed so quickly, because I have done a bit of research and I know how to manage players maybe a bit better than I did that first game I had. But I've come a long way, I suppose, that way.
Yeah, I think it's just that attention to detail, and you've worked hard at it, and that's how you've progressed so well. And what about then? What's your aspiration sort of going forward? Is it obviously to referee up to Premier League level, and also is there a pathway for referees here that if you did think, okay, I'd like to referee across the water, is there a pathway for referees in Northern Ireland to referee across the water, or what way does that work?
I'll take the first part of it first. So aspirations wise, yes, I suppose I do have aspirations of being a senior referee in Northern Ireland. I've been fortunate enough that obviously I've been promoted quite a few times in the last few years. Even with COVID and stuff in between, I haven't, like, refereeing wise, maybe I've done about 3 years in total. So I have. So I suppose I've been promoted quite a bit. I'm in the Premier Intermediate League at the minute. So aspirations would be then just to move up the Championship, which is the next step. A good friend of mine from Mid Ulster, Stuart Long, he was in the Premier Intermediate last year. He came up with me last year, promoted, and he's just recently been promoted to the Championship again, So there is clearly progression opportunities there within the league. Just depends, I suppose, on how many above are moving. If there's no referees moving at Championship and none at the Premiership, then there's going to be little movement. But I suppose the likes of Trevor Moutry, who's the head of the Irish Football Association referees, he tries to move people along, and he tries to sort of guide them in the right path. And we do have monthly meetings that are very useful. And we talk about decisions, and we talk about how to get to the next step and stuff. So there is that career aspiration there, I suppose, to move on to senior refereeing within Northern Ireland. To talk about moving across to England as a pathway, it's not something that I'm aware of. If you were going over to England, you would maybe be moving across, but depending on your level, you'd obviously have to move through the ranks in England as well. So their levels are slightly different than ours. They go through level 5, level 4, level 3 and that sort of thing up the Premiership. So I suppose ours is slightly different, where you go from a junior referee to an intermediate referee, then on the Premier Intermediate referee, and then on the Championship and then Premiership. So there's not as much levels, I suppose, in Northern Ireland as it would be in England. So it's not something I'm aware of, and I don't think it would be possible to move over there and go straight into the likes of maybe even non-league, League One sort of direction. I think that would be fairly high up.
Yeah, I suppose one step at a time. And anyway, I don't want you going over to the Premier League and taking the Man United Liverpool game, because Man United get enough decisions without them getting a few more, and you probably give them about 15 minutes injury time, like back in the Fergie days.
Depends if we score or not. If we score, if they don't score, just keep playing till we score. If they do score, so,
next goal wins.
Next goal wins.
Very good. Happy days. And I think it's good to know as well that, I suppose for anybody, like I said, that's listening, is thinking about taking up refereeing, that you do have a lot of support there, because then that might be something that might put off somebody, that they think, oh, I'm going to be by myself. You don't really have much support or go-to people, but, you've got mentors there, and, obviously as you move up the ranks, then you're having your monthly meetings to reflect maybe on certain decisions or rule changes or things like that. So, which is great. It's good to know you have that support.
Yeah, and even for anybody that is sort of thinking about it, that is fairly new, like, even though you move up the ranks and you go to monthly meetings with the sort of like top tier officials, you have your Mid Ulster referees, or wherever you're going to referee. The Mid Ulster Referees Association do a monthly meeting, and anybody's invited. It could be sort of new starts, it could be boys that have been refereeing for years, but everybody comes along, and there's sessions on handball or sessions on penalty kicks, free kicks, that sort of thing, and managing players. So there's always a session for everybody, and I suppose that's one thing we're very lucky to have, is dedicated people behind the scenes, especially in my association with Ulster. Like, We've Lee Tavender that was heading up the Referees Association with us there, and he's a Premiership referee. So we would have got together on a monthly basis and gone through video clips and stuff. And like Jerry Murray and Joe O'Neill, those type of boys who look after you, So we're well looked after, and I suppose that's something I would encourage anybody if they are thinking about it and they're maybe not sure. Reach out to somebody and give us a shout. Anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm more than welcome to chat to them as well.
Happy days. That's great. So, that's brilliant. So when does your pre-season then? Do you have like a kind of pre-season that things kick off, or that you just have to do your fitness assessment, or?
Yeah, fitness test starts 1st of July. So my fitness test I think is on the 3rd of July, but I'm refereeing there at the Craigavon Cup on the 1st and 2nd, so it'll be a tight 3rd July session, I suppose. But yeah, we have to pass fitness tests before the start of the season, depending on what level you're at. So I suppose if you want to referee at my level, you have to do the senior test. So the senior test is tough, tough enough. But if you're anyway fit or anyway prepared, you'll pass it okay. But I suppose for anybody that's refereeing at junior and intermediate, there's other sort of fitness tests as well that maybe aren't as tough as a senior test, but they're still there to sort of make sure that the referees are fit enough to referee at that level.
Yeah. And what about, we talked about sort of players that you look up to. What about referees? Is there referees sort of locally that you look up to, or across the water?
Yeah, I suppose all local referees that are doing Premiership, like referees, it's a tough job. So any referee, see, to be honest, it doesn't matter whether you're in the Premiership or whether you're in the junior leagues or intermediate leagues. Any referee I look up to, because it's a tough job. It's not an easy job to do. So any referee that puts themselves out there on a Saturday, I look up to, because they're doing a good job. And even when things don't go well, they're still coming back the next Saturday trying to correct that. So I suppose I would look up to everybody. But in terms of boys that maybe have set an example, the likes of Andrew Davey, who's fairly good referee, somebody who takes the courses and somebody that's there, I suppose, for support after the initial sort of beginner's course. So he's somebody, I suppose, that I have a lot of time for, somebody that's very experienced, I suppose.
Good stuff. Right. So we're gonna, of course, you're sending on your Keepie Uppies. So I'm looking forward to that, because you've obviously played with some brilliant players. But we're going to spin the wheel of Burba, named after I was going to say ex-teammate of ours, Sean Lavery, in Oxford, but now he's playing for our over 35s team. So he's actually a teammate now. So going to spin the wheel of Burba here, and it's going to land on a football topic which you have to give us your opinion on, and it's VAR. Okay, that's an interesting one. With you being a referee, maybe I've rigged this slightly, but anyway, good or bad? What's your opinion?
It is a topic that is very controversial for a lot of people. I'm all in favour of VAR. I actually think it's very, very good, because when you consider technology has improved so much, if the technology is there, why not use it? The only sort of thing with VAR is that it's how it's used. When we talk about VAR, that's to make sure that the referee doesn't make a clear and obvious error. But when you've boys in VAR that are human, naturally there might be errors in their decision making as well. So, I suppose it's always going to be open to interpretation. But I think in terms of VAR, the referee probably needs to use the screen a wee bit more. And needs to be brought to the screen more for decisions, maybe that are maybe classed as clear and obvious errors, to have a look at them for himself. Sometimes it's a case where sort of like they just play on, maybe if there is a controversial, and then they are having to go out and apologise to clubs after, maybe if they've made a mistake. But I think if we show the referee the footage, I suppose of controversial situations, then it would eliminate sort of the need for any sort of apologies to clubs, because it gives the referee a better chance to look at it, because he's going on the basis of somebody else in the VAR room. But I suppose for me, I like it. I think it's helpful. Offsides, I suppose, is another controversial one. In terms of offsides, you have a couple of sort of decisions, maybe I suppose recently, even the Northern Ireland game there against Denmark, like it took 5 minutes to make a decision on an offside. So if something's taken that long, is it really a clear and obvious error? And enough to maybe disallow the goal? Probably in my opinion, no, but the laws are clear, and the fact that if it's offside, it's offside. But I suppose if it's taking 5 minutes to get the decision using VAR, then either the technology is not working as it should, or we need to amend the guidelines a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough answer. I think you're right. I think for the fact you just have another human making a decision, albeit he's looking at different angles, but it is subjective, so he might well get that decision wrong as well. There's some situations where I think they have got it right, but the offside one, I just can't understand. I just can't understand why it took them as you said, 5 minutes, and it's happened previously. You'd think with modern technology they can quickly draw a line and they can determine if it's offside or not. And there's even been scenarios, I think, last season in the Premier League, the very top division in Europe, where I think they forgot to draw the line, or the line wasn't drawn in the correct position. You're thinking, how is that even happening? It's crazy,
It is, and I suppose they're being trained on it, so I suppose it's something I've never seen in use, so can't comment on the training or anything like that, but we are trained to use it, I suppose, but if we're using it correctly, it's definitely a valuable tool. And I suppose another one that they're looking at, it's that semi-automated offside, where they have the sort of cameras on the players as such, on the ball, and it sort of tells you where the players are. So I suppose that's good, and it's something that's maybe going to be coming in probably sooner rather than later. I know they were trialling it last year, so there were decisions that are probably a lot more accurate being made on the back of that. So I suppose when technology changes, obviously it's good for the game, but I suppose the downside is that if it's disruptive to the game, then people aren't going to enjoy it as such.
Yeah. And what about do you know anything about VAR and Lite? They've been talking about introducing that in the Irish League. They've been talking about that maybe for about the last 12 months. How does it differ, or?
I suppose it's the only thing about it is it's less cameras, so it's not the full VAR, but I mean VAR is VAR, so you have the cameras and you have the angles, so it's just about trying to make a decision with, I suppose, less cameras, so it is. So obviously the Premiership clubs have cameras everywhere to try and get as many angles as they can, whereas VAR doesn't have as many cameras. But I suppose I know from being at meetings and stuff that it's something that they were talking about, and something that they'd hope to have in soon, I suppose. But the thing with VAR is there's a lot of cost to it, so there is. So it depends whether it's going to be beneficial to the league or not. So I suppose that's not a decision for you or I, but I suppose it would definitely do no harm to have VAR like in the Irish League, to help sort of eradicate any sort of clear and obvious errors that are being made. So there's not to say that there's been any massive errors over the last sort of 12 months. I suppose the year sort of went well. There are errors there, but I suppose VAR Lite's there to sort of eradicate any clear and obvious ones, but it would be good to have it.
Yes, just watch this space.
Watch the space, that's it.
Well, Niall, thanks a million for coming on. That was fantastic, just to get a wee angle, obviously, on your excellent playing career and your refereeing career, which is onwards and upwards, and fingers crossed in a few years' time we'll be seeing you in the Premier League. Not the English Premier League, because I don't want you anywhere near Man United, because as I said, you get enough decisions as it is. But no, it's great to have you on, and fantastic chat, and we'll get that uploaded and live in the next day or two.
Perfect. No, thanks very much for having me on. Great opportunity, I suppose, to go on and chat about all things playing and refereeing. So definitely worthwhile. So I have listened to a couple of podcasts, like I said, over the last sort of couple of weeks, and they've been fairly good, and it's good to have a mix of people, I suppose. So looking forward to hearing it, and thanks very much for having me on.
That's great. All right, now we'll hear all the best. You take it easy.
All right. Cheers, and you too. Cheers.
Now let's hear Niall's Keepie Uppies answers.
So best team ever played for, probably Glenavon Reserves. The team itself was fantastic. Best captain, Decky McVeigh. Best goal scorer, Fitzy, Remy Fitzpatrick. He absolutely loved to bang the goals in. Best touch, Craig Taylor. Best keeper, Andy Coleman. Best defender, Mark Hockey. Best midfielder, James Singleton. Best striker, James Costello. Best left foot, Craig Taylor. Best manager, probably Jerry McMahon. Loves a hard challenge, Anthony McGonnell. Quickest player, Josh Barton. Played with him at Lurgan Celtic. Always played in the left wing, and he was an absolute flying machine. Best all-round player, this one was tough. I've played with very, very good players. I suppose for me, probably Daggy McVeigh, although he probably isn't playing Irish League football at the minute. He's playing there at Oxford as a captain, but you could play him absolutely anywhere. Back in the day as well, he was an absolutely excellent player. So for me, he's probably one of the best all-round players I've played with that could play anywhere. Player got better with age. Probably Jardy O'Rourke, plays for Crusaders now. We were playing together at Dungannon, and he was okay. He was good, but he probably wasn't at the level as he is now. And the best player probably always give 100% was Mark Carson, who's playing at Loughgall there. Absolutely loves football, this guy, and he always give 100% on the pitch.
Keepie Uppies with Richie and Tots.